Welcome everybody to another edition of PhinManiacs Live, and according to what we see here, it seems to be working okay for the moment. So let's go ahead and see if we can get through this show. We got some stuff to talk about this week. We got some training camp that we're going to discuss. It's coming up right around the corner. And then, of course, we have Miko Grimes, who once again went on another rant against the Miami Dolphins and even made some anti-Semitic remarks. So, yeah, she went after the Jews this time, ladies and gentlemen. So that's always fun, isn't it? No. And then we're going to discuss who could be the new face of South Florida sports now that, unfortunately, Dwyane Wade has moved on from the Miami Heat and he'll be signing with the Chicago Bulls, although he seems to be held up in that. I don't know, maybe he's having second thoughts about leaving for some reason. I personally would not, but I digress. Let's go ahead and get this thing started. We're going to start with training camp, and I want to know, this is, ladies and gentlemen, we're just testing things out here. So let's take this nice and slow and we'll go ahead and just get started. I want to know since Chad, you've returned back from Canada. By the way, how was your vacation?
It was good, Lewis. Caught a lot of fish, walleye, northern pike, and it was a nice little getaway from the hustle and bustle of every day. So I'm all regenerated and ready for training camp.
Good to know. Good to know. And hopefully we'll see you coming down. And you too, Ron. We got a lot of stuff to watch, and we got a lot of. I could use some help this time. We can all melt together.
Yeah, definitely. I've got some days planned out to be there for sure.
Okay, yeah, well, and actually, I shouldn't say that we'll melt because the balcony, the Miami Dolphins went ahead and did something nice for the fan base. They put themselves up a canopy so that nobody's going to be like burning under the sun or anything. It's still going to be hot, of course, because it's South Florida in the summertime. But at least the sun won't be beating down on us and roasting us like lobsters.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to that because you just melt out there. The sun's just baking right in your face the entire time. They should have really put the stands facing the other way, but
Well,
it is what it is. Or put the
other
practices at night, one or the other.
Well, I'm trying to picture that because if you have the stands facing the other way, then what are you looking at? You're looking at the reporters up on the balcony where we want to be.
No, meaning if they put it on the other side of the.
Yeah, I know, man.
Yeah. Or they could put the sun on the other side. Whichever, I don't care.
That would be impressive.
At least with the cover now, we won't melt as bad.
Well, not as bad. Like it's still gonna be freaking hot out there, but
yeah,
it can only do so much.
Degrees, yeah.
All right, so training camp right around the corner. Lots of players that are going to be watched. Lots of players are going to be competing for spots. But we all have like one guy in particular who we really want to see how they do when training camp starts. And since Chad, you've came back from vacation, I want to see. I want to know who you want to watch really carefully in training camp. So, who's your number one guy you want to keep an eye on?
Well, currently on the roster, and this is kind of grouping two together, I want to see the cornerback. So I want to see Bobby McCain. I'm really curious if he's going to be able to handle the slot. That's a very difficult position to handle, especially for a young player like that. And then the other boundary corner, whether it's going to be Xavier Howard or Tony Lippett, that's a lot of inexperience and youth in our secondary, and that's my biggest concern right now on our team is are we going to be able to effectively, shut down the pass? Everything I'm seeing preached is Miami's going to play a lot more in-your-face press coverage and try to blitz the quarterback, which means for young corners you got to be technically very sound, or you get a lot of grab holding penalties, or you get burned on some go routes and stuff like that. So I'm really curious to see how our young defensive backs hold up in a pressured defensive scheme this year.
And how about you, Ron?
Mine's a little, I guess, kind of out of the ordinary, out of the box. I'm really interested in Thomas Duarte, the tight end, wide receiver / tight end they drafted in the 7th round. I just think he has a lot of skill and a lot of ability, and I'm really curious to see if he can make the transition to an NFL tight end, though, because he was just more of a receiver. He really wasn't a tight end in college, but and they'll also have to kind of build him up some size-wise over the next few years. So I'm just curious, can he make a big enough jump in his first training camp to grab a spot and see if we could develop him?
But yours is you picked a name that's kind of out there, kind of things like Thomas Duarte. Like there are a lot of other guys who are I don't know if I don't want to say more interesting because your guy is your guy, but Is there any particular reason why you wouldn't pick somebody like more mainstream, somebody like a Tony Lippett or somebody like that? Why Duarte in particular?
I mean, I really liked him, and I've been trying this year to actually watch a little bit of a film. Now, I don't necessarily know what the heck I'm looking at, but I watched some film on every single rookie that we got, and he was the one that kind of stuck out to me the most. As far as, man, I was really kind of surprised that he dropped as far as he did just watching him play. So he interested me. I am concerned about our tight end spot, not just for this year, but even more for the future. And I know he's more of a future pick because beyond Cameron, I mean, we just don't know what else we have there. So for those reasons, I'm just interested to see if he can kind of get into the mix and do some things. I mean, I understand that there's lots of other question marks on the team, but I didn't really look at the question like it was what about the question marks we have here, here, and here, because I could go on forever about that. I just kind of, chose the guy that I was most interested to see if he can develop.
Okay, so you're interested in seeing him develop. Now, let me change the question a little bit. You want Duarte to be the guy who develops, but is there somebody who is currently fighting for a roster like a starting spot that you want to check out?
I'm curious to see then what we're gonna do. How well Jay Ajayi does being a workhorse for us, and how much Kenyon Drake gets into the mix in there, and how much are they splitting reps, and where that balance is. I'm very, very, very curious to see what they do with that situation, given how hard they seem to try and find somebody else beyond Ajayi this entire offseason. I'm curious to see, are they just going to give him the ball 80% of the time, or is Drake going to get it a lot more than people think, as far as just being a common running back and not just a gimmicky kind of guy?
I think to go with what Ron's saying, this is just what I believe is going to happen. And it might be something we get to see a little bit of training camp, but this kind of thing we won't see a lot of. But I think the personnel and scheme diversity that Gase is going to use is going to be huge. So I think you're going to see, formations come in where you'll see, Dirte in there, playing tight end in an odd scheme. You already know he's not going to be a great blocker as a rookie, but I think you'll suddenly see him in the field in certain matchups. You'll see Jakeem Grant, you'll see Drake, and Jahe. So I'll be surprised if the Miami just lines up and just runs Ajayi 80% of the time. I think they're going to be coming out very, very diverse, and it kind of along with what you see somebody like the Saints do or the Patriots, where you may see a drive that features Drake and then he may not play for the rest of the half. And you know what I mean? I think they're going to jump around a lot, and that's the purpose in this personnel they've been getting in the draft. I mean, I think you would be crazy to think Duarte is going to come in and be a starting tight end for the Dolphins. He's just this year anyway. There's no way he's going to be able to hold up from a blocking standpoint. But that doesn't mean Miami's not going to have some really unique formations that have him on the field that create some interesting mismatches. And so that's what I'm looking for. I don't think throughout the games we're going to see a lot of the same 11 base personnel on the field. I think it's going to be mixing all the time.
And that's what I would hope to see, because like you mentioned teams like the Patriots and stuff. These guys, those are teams that they take their players and they see which team what can you do to make a mismatch on the opposing team. Like if they see this player over here, then we're going to throw this player at him because this specific player won't be able to handle him, and they will exploit that all the way through. Now, we always think about how it seems like only the Patriots are the true masters at doing this, but if Adam Gase can find a way to find these mismatches and exploit them, not just find the mismatches, because anybody can find a mismatch. No, anybody can say, oh, well, let's see, Kenny Stills can run right past Darrelle Revis because Darrelle Revis struggles against pure speed. But you have to exploit that, not just find it. You have to be willing to make somebody look like a fool. Like whenever Tom Brady plays against the Dolphins, I remember it was Will Davis that the poor kid just couldn't keep up with Brady's throwing. He threw the ball at him every single time, and it was brutal to watch Will Davis struggle that way. We need to find somebody who can make those mismatches all the time and just make it happen on the field when it really counts. And not only that, when it counts, just in general, I want to see the Dolphins offense dominate in a way that the Patriots do. And now obviously that a lot of that relies on Ryan Tannehill, who I would like to say is the guy that I want to see in training camp, but that would be a lie. Truth be told, the guy I'm looking at is Laramie Tunsil, because I want to know what Laramie Tunsil is going to do with the pads on while he's at guard. I'm seeing more and more people on Twitter horribly regretting the whole idea of Laramie Tunsil getting shifted over to left guard. So I am curious as to how he's going to do once the real shoving matches begin. Because if he can't cut it and Dallas Thomas winds up starting again, I think I might lose it.
I don't think you're going to be overly impressed with Laramie Tunsil at guard this year. I think he may win the job, but he wasn't brought in. He wasn't an all-star guard in college. He was a really good left tackle, and his talents are more inclined to succeed at tackle. And if you're thinking Miami made that pick for him to come in and dominate at guard, you're probably going to be disappointed. The pick is a value pick for him to be the left tackle probably yet this year if Albert gets hurt, or probably next year you've got a premium position drafted on your team. That's really what his future is the left tackle. I don't have any visions now that he's just going to come in and just dominate at guard. I just don't see it happening.
Well, I mean, I would like to say you're wrong, but I'm starting to feel like it isn't going to happen either, because we keep trying to say stuff like, well, Jonathan Ogden of the Ravens started his first year at guard and then was just fine at left tackle. It doesn't look like Laramie Tunsil is going to be quite as talented as Jonathan Ogden, apparently, because if he can't, this is where I need older people who have watched Jonathan Ogden back in his rookie year. How long ago was that? It almost feels like almost 2 decades or something like that. How did Jonathan Ogden do in his rookie year? Was he dominating, or was he just meh at left guard and then he went and dominated at left tackle?
Well, that's kind of my point, Louis. I expect Laramie Tunsil could beat Dallas Thomas out. That's not saying a whole lot, but if you're expecting him to stand out and be an awesome guard, you're probably not going to see it. And part of it's because of that. I mean, a lot of misconception, I think, with the Dolphins is the problem with the offensive line is the guards. And not that our guard play was good, but you just got to keep in mind, it's been rare we've had our 2 starting left tackles in there at the same time for it. It's definitely not a whole season. We've either had Albert hurt or James hurt, or Albert is trying to rehab. And so that makes it even worse on the guards, because you don't have a left tackle that can always handle something one-on-one. I mean, when you've got Jason Fox in there and guys like that's a difficult situation. And so I think the value in Laramie Tunsil more than anything is we have a future left tackle, and we have really good depth now at the tackle position. If Brandon Albert gets hurt week 1, we immediately have a very talented guy that can play the position. And so that's where his value lies. If it's our guard play that this season's all about, we're going to have more issues, than that. I mean, the guard is the easier position on the offensive line to play. You don't have to be overly agile, and you have to be just stout enough to hold up against the D tackles in the league. But that's not a talent level that you need to play left tackle, where you've got to be able to handle people that are quick like a Cameron Wake and be able to drive blocks. So you're only going to really be getting to see half of Laramie Tunsil's talent, if you will, when he plays guard anyway.
Yeah, I can understand that. Let's see. I'm trying to think of somebody else that I really want to keep an eye on when training camp starts. I know that Laramie Tunsil is one of them, but you know what? What I really want to see is I want to see what Jarvis Landry can do, since he's going to be playing on the outside. Because Jarvis Landry, I mean, Matthew Knowles and I, the guy who does the film, he's the one who's been showing me all these clips, and I'm the one, and I've been captioning it up, and hopefully with any luck, it'll be up by tomorrow, so everybody's going to hopefully get to enjoy that. But what I've been seeing from Jarvis Landry is he wants to be elite, and I can appreciate that drive and that work ethic to be that kind of a player. But his limitations are, I feel like those he only has a couple of them, but those limitations I feel are enough to actually keep him away from becoming an elite wide receiver. Like, he wants to break free of the slot receiver label. Like, everybody thinks of Jarvis Landry as a slot receiver. Like, he can do all of these things. He can break tackles. He can make amazing plays. He can run the ball if need be. I think he threw a pass here and there, so everybody can start saying Jarvis Landry for quarterback, but I digress. His over-the-top speed is not impressive, which is something that a lot of number one wide receivers have. And if they don't have that, then what they do have is size and the same physicality that Jarvis Landry brings, but just on a bigger frame, and that's what allows them to become considered number one wide receivers. Jarvis Landry just he's either not fast enough or he's not big enough. Now, if he proves me wrong, I'll be more than happy to pay him whatever he wants, because it's like Doug Baldwin of the Seahawks got over $10 million per year now, I think, is what his new contract is, and he's a slot receiver. So I can only imagine what somebody like Jarvis Landry is going to demand when his contract is up. And considering the way NFL contracts are going, Olivier Vernon got almost over almost $100 million. That's kind of a scary prospect to think of. How much are we going to wind up paying Jarvis Landry when it's time to repay him? Are we gonna wind up losing one of the best weapons in our offense over the past 2 years because we just can't afford him, and he's a slot guy?
Well, I think to answer some of your questions, the first going back, I honestly don't think you're going to see Jarvis Landry doing a lot of outside work. I think you're going to see a lot of diversity, and so it's going to be, what are we matching up against? The team that Gase put together right away was a team that you can change formations based on who you're playing. So if we're playing teams that have small, quick defensive backs, I think you're going to see maybe guys like Jerte active and Devontae Parker, and they're going to get the ball up, and so they can go up and get it, and Jordan Cameron and those sorts of guys. But if you're playing bigger, slower D-backs, it wouldn't surprise me to see Jerte inactive, and you see Jakeem Grant in there instead, and they're giving him the ball in space and saying, all right, let's see your 6'1", 210-pound corners try to catch him and stop him from putting moves on you in space. And it's matchup. And so Jarvis, can he play on the outside? I'm sure there's going to be formations where he'll shift to the outside or be some on the outside. But I think typically, if you're looking at it from a percentage standpoint, it'll be primarily Devontae Parker and Kenny Stills on the outside. And I think Carew and Landry will work the middle a lot more, just because they're a more physical wide receiver. And so that's what I think you'll see. I'll be surprised if they put Landry on the outside in matchups a lot of times, because he just isn't. He's not tall to go up and get the ball, and he's not really fast. He's much better in the middle of the field. In terms of the contract, I fully expect that after this season, Miami's going to work really hard to sign Jarvis Landry prior to the next year, so that they can get him at a more reasonable rate. And also for Jarvis Landry's benefit, he doesn't have to go through the final year of his rookie contract with the risk of getting hurt. And so it's kind of a win-win for the team. So I expect they'll make him a very well-paid wide receiver. But I'll be highly disappointed with the money they have right now that they've kind of protected. I think they have in the range of $17 million. I expect them to roll the majority of that over. I don't think they're going to make any big dollar signings. They may get a veteran here or there, but they're not going to spend a bunch of money now, and they'll roll that in. I think you'll probably see maybe somebody like Brandon Albert move on next year to free up cap space, and they'll have the money. And I think that's what their intent is to do, is to sign some of these guys up, so we don't get into these Olivier Vernon and Lamar Miller situations where teams are going to overpay for those players and the Dolphins have to let them go.
Yeah, I had to say I definitely agree with Chad in respect to Landry playing on the outside or not playing on the outside. When you have a coach like Gase, that we've been told is very good at using the skill sets of the players he has, hard to believe he's going to take one of the probably top 5 slot guys in the NFL and make him sit there and play the outside for 70% of the snaps. I don't buy into that. I know I've heard some of that. I just don't buy into Gase doing that. And I'd have to say I 100% agree with Chad on what he was talking about with the contract thing. I mean, that's exactly what it seems they'll be doing. Plus, if they decide they do want to keep Tannehill, they can always restructure that, re-sign him and restructure to save some cap space. Or if they decide to move on from Tannehill, they would save big cap space. So either way, I feel extremely comfortable. They're going to have the money to sign Landry when the time comes.
Yeah, and to touch on what you're saying there, Ron, I know that's a little bit different topic, but a lot of people are unaware the Dolphins got a very good deal on the Tannehill contract because the percentage of it is not guaranteed. And so, yeah, it's a big contract, but for exactly what you said, Miami, now that they've gotten a couple years into it, they can easily walk away without an enormous cap hit because it's a non-guaranteed deal. And so most quarterbacks would be like, no way in the world would they accept that kind of deal right now with what's going on. I mean, you look at what somebody like Andrew Luck's getting that, at the time there was a lot of negativity about the Tannehill contract, but you're kind of seeing it play out that Miami put themselves in a good position. If it's not working, they're not tied to Tannehill. So I'm not advocating that I don't think he's going to work out. I'm just saying the contract's very favorable relative to the other, top quarterbacks in the league.
It gives them some flexibility either way, whether they want to keep Tannehill and restructure or move on. Either way, they're going to be able to create more than enough space to sign, one of your best wide receivers. And you're years down the road from having to sign Parker. And we don't even know what Parker's going to be, if he's going to be anything at this point. So that's really probably not really in the future plans, but I imagine everything they're doing right now, Landry is kind of part of those future plans. At least if I was doing it, I'm sure he would be. I imagine Tannenbaum and Donna Ponte are thinking the same thing.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's true with, just touching back on that Tannehill contract, that's true the other direction. You're right on flexibility. If Tannehill plays terrific this year, they have the ability to convert a big chunk of his contract to guaranteed money and then spread it out. And so they can still free up a lot of cap space. Let's say they can even extend him. If they want to extend him out like another year or two and then convert a big chunk of it to a bonus that they can spread out over
that out. Yeah, exactly.
Mm-hmm. They can pick and choose what year they want to take the most weight from Tannehill's contract. Then I mean they'll be able to dictate that rather than Ryan Tannehill dictate that. And so it's a very, very good contract.
Yeah, the big thing they'll really have to watch for is whatever year that Sue will have the big giant hit of like a $25 million hit. They have to kind of figure out how to work around that year.
Yeah, the Sue, I was this offseason when they did the conversion. They lowered their cap. They freed up, I should say, their cap space this year by converting even more of his contract to a bonus, which means it's gone. They've given it to him and it's spread out over the life of his contract. So if they cut him, that's a higher dead money. Mm-hmm. So there's not much place left to them. And Ndamukong Suh is going to play out the majority of that contract on the Dolphins, no matter whether he's here hurt or if he's gone, it'll be dead money. But the majority of that contract's already on the books for the Dolphins. At least a huge percentage of it is, I should say.
Yeah.
I do have a question for you guys now that you guys bring it up. But first, I want to introduce our fourth panelist for the night, Max Himmelrich. Welcome to the show, man.
How's it going?
All right, so now that we've got the whole gang here, I want to ask you guys a question. Since you Chad and Ron brought this up, so I'm going to go ahead and run with this question. And it was something that somebody asked this morning on Twitter, and it got me curious. Do you think that the Dolphins should move on from Ryan Tannehill next year? And let me add some context to this. What would it take for the Dolphins to move on from Tannehill? What would have to happen for the Dolphins to say enough is enough with this guy? And
is that question for me?
Well, you can answer it first if you want. Go ahead.
For me, for the Dolphins to get rid of Ryan Tannehill, it would take opportunity. The quarterback market right now is absolutely on its head. It makes no sense. There's no logic. Guys like Ryan Fitzpatrick feel entitled to $25 million a year or whatever it is. And the market's insane. The Dolphins have a very, very, very friendly deal with Ryan Tannehill, all things considered. What it would take for the Miami Dolphins to move on from Ryan Tannehill is, I think, purely opportunities. It would require them having a chance at a guy like depending on how they feel about a Brad Kaya or a Deshaun Watson, who I think is an outstanding prospect. Deshaun Watson, that is. If they had the opportunity to get one of those guys, I think then it could make sense to move on from Ryan Tannehill. But going into a season, rarely, if ever, can you set guidelines without understanding what happens, in terms of circumstance. What happens if, Mike Pouncey and Brandon Albert go down? Then we're back where we started with, can we blame Ryan Tannehill for what's happening or not? I really think the only thing that you could say for sure would cause the Dolphins to want to get rid of Ryan Tannehill is if they're bad enough that they're in a position to get a Deshaun Watson or a Brad Kaya in the draft, and they get that rookie salary that can help you so much in building a team.
To go along with that, I mean, Max, even if Miami has a bad year, they've got to have an extremely bad year if you watch what happened this year. I mean, what happened in this draft is there was premium picks paid out for the top 2 quarterback prospects. And so it's extremely difficult to get those guys in the draft. I mean, you've got to
then the other, piggybacking off that, how bad does Ryan Tannehill, let's say the Cleveland Browns RG3 experiment fails and the Browns are trying to get up. Let's say the Dolphins have the 2nd overall pick and the Browns are trying to get up there. How bad does Tannehill have to have been for the Dolphins to not take, 3 future first rounders and 2 future second rounders for that pick? Because if Ryan Tannehill performs just slightly worse than he did last season and the Dolphins have, a couple more years left on his contract, I'd rather have that package of picks than Watson or Kaya, barring something crazy happening next season. Neither of them are Andrew Luck. They're not these surefire prospects. They're very, very good prospects, better than Goff or Wentz, but they're not Luck level prospects.
And if I may, Max, if I may be so bold for just a moment, with all due respect to Andrew Luck, I'm not exactly blown away by his incredible awesomeness. He's not one of the elites in the NFL even now.
What?
I don't think so. I think he makes I think he makes too many mistakes for Andrew Luck to be considered on Tom Brady, Aaron Rodgers, that kind of a level. No, I'm not. He's better than Tannehill. He's better than Tannehill. There's no doubt about that.
Okay, there we go.
I'm not saying Tannehill. No. I'm not that crazy. No, Andrew Luck is good.
That's what I thought. That's where I thought that was my.
I'm just not.
That's where I thought you were going.
He just doesn't blow my mind. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I can totally agree with that. But it's also partially salary cap based. The reason the Seahawks were able to build that ridiculous roster is because they had Russell Wilson at $800,000 a year. I mean, for the Dolphins, if you get to move on to a younger quarterback, it means that they get that salary cap, and that is so critical in today's NFL. I mean, you look at what the New England Patriots consistently do. They've got Tom Brady down at $12 million a year. It's crazy.
Well, Brady's a whole different other issue. How about you, Ron?
I think that the odds of Tannehill being not a Miami Dolphin after this year, it would take an epic Josh Freeman kind of collapse of Tannehill himself, and it would take the team winning 1 or 2 games and, like Max said, putting themselves in that spot. And then you don't cut him. You trade him. I'm telling you, because for instance, you would trade him because he would be such a hot commodity. I guarantee you, somebody out there is a team out there that would trade you some picks. And I'm not saying a couple first rounders, but maybe even a first round pick. But then let's say you don't trade him, you still keep him. You do what the Eagles did with Sam Bradford. You draft your guy, but you still keep Tannehill. But between the skill that Tannehill has, number one, the fact he's still in his 20s, number two, and that team-friendly contract, he is such a tradable commodity. So you would trade him, you wouldn't cut him, but I just don't see it happening. Even if they collapse, they're going to maybe draft a guy, but they're going to keep Tannehill around at least another year beyond that. It's just, and he might say, hey, I want to get out of here. But I don't even think Tannehill's that kind of guy. I think he would try and play through it and prove I am the guy. You shouldn't have drafted a quarterback. That's just, to me, what I think would happen. So I think he'll be a Dolphin in 2017, almost 100%.
Well, yeah, Ron, I mean, think about this offseason. What the Denver Broncos, perfect example, a team that, with Ryan Tannehill could be better than they were last year. Think about what the Denver Broncos would be willing to give up for Ryan Tannehill. if I were the Denver Broncos and they had any thought that Ryan Tannehill was on the trade block, I don't think the Dolphins would even entertain offers at this point. I think Tannehill was an integral part of Adam Gase taking the job in Miami. But if the Broncos were to put an offer together, I don't think there would be anything ridiculous about 2 first-rounders for Ryan Tannehill. You know, if you consider what the Denver Broncos could do with Tannehill and that defense, those first-rounders are basically second-rounders. You know, the Broncos would be in the AFC Championship game. They would be in the divisional round. It's not hard to imagine those first-rounders essentially being second-rounders and the Broncos offering up 2 of them to the Dolphins for Ryan Tannehill even now.
I bet you I could rattle off 10 teams right now that would give Miami 2 first-round picks immediately for
How many can you name, Chad? I'm curious.
The Jets easily would do it. The Buffalo Bills easily would do
Browns.
it.
The Bills?
The Patriots, I think, would easily do it. I mean, Ryan Tannehill at his contract and his age, when you got a guy that's 38, the Broncos would do it.
The Cardinals?
Cardinals would do it. Look how he's getting up there in age. The Saints would probably do it.
Yeah, Houston would have before they
49ers?
signed. Houston would have before they signed Osweiler. They would have.
I mean, these are all teams that either don't have a very good quarterback or they're soon to not have a quarterback.
Think about a team like the Chargers or the Cowboys. Teams that need a guy for the future.
For a starting, I mean, I'm under no delusion that Ryan Tannehill is a top quarterback, but I'll stand pretty firmly. He's a top 15 guy. You know, he's right around that range. And everybody's worried about wanting to be the top 5 guy. Everybody wants Brady. You know, everybody wants to have what Peyton Manning was or Aaron Rodgers. But you forget, and Dolphins fans shouldn't forget, what it's like to not have a top 20 guy. You know, what happens when you're
Ray Lucas?
When you're Ray Lucas. Right now, the Jets they're stressing out trying to get Fitzpatrick. And you know what I mean? That's rough. And, you know, like, what are the Jets' real chances? Do they have a real chance of competing this year with Ryan Fitzpatrick at quarterback? You know, they may be a wild card contender. They may be able to get 500 or better, but that almost, to me, ensures no chance that they're going to make a run at the Super Bowl. And you got to have, you know, good quarterbacks to even have a chance. And so Tannehill still has a ceiling.
I think we need to examine that. I mean, like, if we're talking about the Jets have a really serious team outside of the quarterback position. I mean, that's a good football roster. And if I'm the Jets, they've got a lot of young players on good deals and a lot of good, like the Brandon Marshall contract is such a good deal for them at this point, considering the prices of wide receivers and how good he was. But as we all know, Brandon Marshall doesn't exactly work out 2 years in a row usually. So, but all things considered, the Jets need to just give him the money, and that's a good statement as to Tannehill's value. You look at a guy like Fitzpatrick, right? Like, think about this from 3 years ago when he was with Buffalo. Let's just say this sentence for a second. Ryan Fitzpatrick is controlling his own market. What? Like, what world have we stumbled into? Like, it's crazy, the quarterback prices. And Ryan Tannehill, whether it be, you know, the fact that Lauren likes the area, that he likes the area, that he just wanted to be in Miami, who knows? But he took a deal that he and his agent both knew were going to be friendly to the Miami Dolphins. Because after this year, Tannehill's dispensable in terms of dead money. Tannehill becomes dispensable. But he does from a cap
standpoint, but he's playing a position where it's not as likely you're going to have your career ended.
You don't just cut quarterbacks willy-nilly.
Yeah, and he knows if it doesn't work out with Miami, he's going to get the money. Like I said, there would be a line of teams right now that would love to just pay him what he's due right now.
Yeah, he'll get paid somewhere.
Think about what Tannehill would get compared to Osweiler if they had both been on the free agent market.
And Tannehill's significantly safer and better than Osweiler, and I'm not ripping him.
He's better even than Osweiler's best last season.
Yeah, he is better and safer for sure. I mean, I think when Tannehill signed that deal, he bet on himself. Bottom line, he was just willing to bet on himself. I mean, you got to respect a guy who's willing to do that. Many of these guys are not willing to do that.
Well, no, I disagree. I think Tannehill almost settled when he took that deal. Betting on himself would have been playing through the 5th-year option or playing another year and showing that he could do it. Tannehill's situation, I think he just decided, and in an equally respectable move, decided, I want to be a Miami Dolphin. This is the team I want to play for. This is the team, if I have success, I want to do it in aqua and orange. He decided if he wanted to be in Miami. And that's pretty clearly, when you understand the interaction between players and agents, that's pretty clearly what happened, because the agents thought would be, wait, don't sign the deal right now. You're a young guy. There's very few injuries that would be devastating to your value. Just let yourself hit the market and let it happen. And Tannehill said, no, whether it's team friendly or not, get me long-term with the Dolphins. And it happened. I think he decided that's where he wants to be. And we need to look at that for a second and say, this is the first year that I think everything could really come together in terms of, personnel around him. If the defense had the same personnel it did last season, and the offense had what it has now in terms of a healthy Devontae Parker and Laramie Tunsil, I think that's a huge difference. But there's a very real chance the Dolphins defense allows 35 points per game next season. So who knows?
Well, I won't hold my breath on the Dolphins suddenly being world beaters on either side of the ball, at least until we actually see something going on, moving on. But let's go ahead and move on to the next topic. I just got a notification on my phone with Adam Beasley retweeting the statement about Miko's anti-Semitic statements yesterday. So guess what we get to talk about next, guys? We just can't get rid of this woman, can we?
Lewis, you texted me today and you said, will you come on the show? We're talking about 3 topics. And I said, I'll take 2 out of 3. The one I wouldn't take was Miko, but I'll do it anyway because you said you'd take me to get Cuban food when I'm down there for training.
And Chad and Ron, you're both invited too. We're all going to have some fun.
Sounds good.
Ron, are you going to be there?
It depends on what day we're talking about.
Pick a day and come with Lewis and I.
Okay. Yeah, I'll definitely be there for quite a few of the days. So.
Awesome.
All right. Well, Max, take it away, man. G-rated though, because we are live.
Yeah. No. My thing about Miko is she's sick. She is mentally ill. She needs help. She needs to go somewhere and get help. She doesn't need people on TV saying, "Oh, what is she doing? Why is she making these decisions?" She's making these decisions, and it's very clear now. She is mentally unstable. And I hope she gets help. Is she fit to have a kid? Is she fit to be caring for a young child? Is she I understand that she wants to express her opinion. And we're seeing, by the way, you can be truthful and honest and have an opinion and do it in a respectable way. Look at Annie Apple, the mother of Eli Apple, who just got drafted to the New York Giants, who's already made a career for herself by telling the truth, being honest, and analyzing sports as a family member of an NFL player. Miko doesn't understand what's going on. And I actually have to amend that. It's not that she doesn't understand. She can't understand. There's something going on, whether it's, I'm not a doctor, I can't diagnose anyone, but Miko Grimes needs to get help because she has a family, and she has a family who, as we all know, clearly loves her very much. And she really, really, really just needs to get help.
I'm actually stunned you've taken that stance. I mean, I don't know. Like again, like you said, I'm not a doctor either, but it sounds good. I know that much. I mean, yeah, Miko's mentally unstable. She needs help, but
the serious mental illness. Like multiple personality disorder, like bordering on schizophrenia, whatever it is. She's clear. Like there are some times, and I still follow her on Twitter, where she's pretty reasonable. She'll just be sitting there talking about basketball, whatever, and then all of a sudden, the switch flips, and she's on an anti-Semitic rant. And I'm Jewish, and I didn't take offense to that, what she said, because it is what it is. But I mean, when you look at that situation, she can't think that it's possible to say that and not cost her husband serious money, because Brent Grimes should have been a highly sought after free agent, and his wife screwed it up. We all know that. His wife messed up his free agent value. Think about what guys like Janoris Jenkins got paid. Brent Grimes was 1 year removed from a Pro Bowl season. I mean, he could have commanded value on the free agent market. And instead, he was forced to take a deal that essentially has a team option after this year that has no dead money if they decide to cut him. And if I'm the Bucks, I don't know what you're doing right now. I mean, do you want this? Like, it's something that you thought. She deleted her social media accounts for 2 days when Brent signed. I don't know if she went back on that and brought him back after he had signed his contract or what, but she needs to get help because she seriously could be suffering from some kind of mental illness.
That's possible. I mean, with Miko, I think her in general is a complete waste of time to follow, listen to what she says, because I don't believe she says hardly anything that's of any real value. That's just my general opinion on her. I don't think she's a very intelligent person. I completely would disagree with anybody that thinks she's smart. I think she's just not very smart, and that's why she does things like what she just did. And as a Dolphins fan, I'm kind of chuckling inside because I'm looking at it like this isn't my problem anymore. And not that it was my personal problem, but as a fan, you had to deal with it. You always had to deal with what's Miko going to do to hurt the team. And she's still attempting to hurt the Dolphins in her mind, but she significantly did the opposite. She hurt Brett even more, and she hurts the Bucks. And I can't even imagine what Brent has to go through because this is his new team, and she makes a remark, whether you take offense to it, is Jewish or not, the reality remains the ownership of the Tampa Bay team is Jewish. And so
it's whether or not you take offense to it, and I should say this because I have to admit it can be offensive, and I understand how it's offensive.
Well, I'm not even worried about whether it is or isn't as much as how foolish it is. I mean, you just think of if you have a girlfriend or a wife and let's say you were employed by somebody and your boss or the owners of the company you work for are Jewish and your wife said something like that in front of them, what would your reaction be? I mean, you would be like, what are you doing?
I'd want to crawl under a table.
Yeah, and so to me, Miko, the only thing she highlights obvious to me is Brent has absolutely no ability to control what's going on. And I've lost any sympathy for Brent Grimes because this has been years where she's heard him over and over and over, at least in the public image and on the sports level. And so if he wants to take that, good luck. And in terms of the Dolphins side of it, this is at the end, for us, because I can tell you how unstable Miko is, whether it's mental illness or she just can't control her temper or rage or whatever. But you have to realize what's coming this season. And so here she's already put Brent at a disadvantage with remarks like that with the ownership. Obviously they haven't commented on it, but you don't have to think very far into it to say, if there's a decision that's 50-50, Brent's going to go right out the door just like he did in Miami in a 50-50 decision because they already have to think about, that part of it. But look at the games coming. So now Brent Grimes is in the AFC South, and they've got to play the Atlanta Falcons twice a year. All this same kind of crap happened when she came to Miami. She was given all those nasty remarks back to the Atlanta Falcons. I believe it was Mike Smith she was harping on, and you know what I mean? She was all over the Atlanta Falcons, and now you've got Brent Grimes in a position where he's a little older. He's got to try to prevent people like Julio Jones from doing well or Drew Brees from doing well. And if he
Elvin
fails,
Benjamin and Cam Newton.
Yeah, so that's what Brent Grimes is tasked with on the field as a shorter guy who's getting into his middle 30s now. At some point, that's going to become just more than he can handle. And so it would be, ideally, somebody like Brent could say, all right, I may not be a number one guy that you can match up one-on-one on Julio Jones. I'm just more of a role play guy. That becomes difficult because of all the pressure he's been put under from Miko. And so the Dolphins are going to be gone. If let's say we get a big game between the Tampa Bay Buccaneers and Atlanta Falcons and Brent Grimes gets blown up in coverage by Julio Jones, who scores 2 touchdowns and 200 yards on him, Tampa Bay is then going to turn on Brent Grimes. They're going to say, well, man, he that's what happens in the NFL. It's a fickle crowd. They're going to be saying, Brent Grimes is done. Get him out of there. We need to get a real corner that can cover. That is what's going to come into Miko Grimes' plate. And how do you guys think she's going to react to that type of scenario?
I don't think Tampa fans are happy as it is. I don't think they were like how many people. I didn't see that many people celebrating that. Yeah, we just signed Brent Grimes to a contract. I didn't. There were a lot of people saying, "Oh crap, we got the other half to come too."
Yeah, but just keep in mind, Atlanta already dislikes her. The Atlanta fans dislike her. The Atlanta ownership and management dislike her. They have personal reasons to not like her because she did to them very similar stuff that she's doing to the Dolphins. And so you just got to keep in mind they may be in position to make Brent look pretty bad because if he's struggling, I mean, they can start to pick on him. I mean, and I would be scared to death because for the reasons we just went into, there are some extremely talented players in the NFC South, in particular quarterbacks and receivers. And I'm just saying, like, it could get ugly for what's coming with Miko. I mean, the Dolphins are out of it, but Tampa Bay better get used to this because the Atlanta fans are going to be all over her if he gets lit up by them. And if that happens, God only knows what's going to be coming from Miko Grimes. Like the stuff she's going to be saying, the people she's going to be throwing blame at, it's not going to be her fault. That's not going to be Brent's fault in her mind. And so I think you're just seeing a small view of what could be coming for the PR nightmare that Tampa is going to have to deal with.
I think you hit the nail on the head there. Brent isn't good enough anymore to make it okay. Let's say, like, for example, let's go to Julio Jones. If Julio Jones had a crazy wife and she was running her mouth, nobody's going to care because nobody's going to cut Julio Jones, no matter what she says. It's like Brent isn't good enough to command that. It's very true what you were saying. He's not, the pressure is on him to say, I'm good enough to justify this. And it's pretty tough to be good enough to justify this level of negative attention. Because even though he's talking about the Dolphins and not the Bucs, and it also makes Miko look like a fool because yesterday she tweeted, the Bucs aren't mad at me about, expressing this statement about my statement about Jewish people. And then the Bucs are upset with her.
But according to who, though? Was it the Jason Cole report that you're referencing here?
Not even that, but I mean, just like it's yes, like it is Jason Cole. I'm sorry. Yes, it is the Jason Cole report, and it's not hard to believe.
Well,
and it's not even.
I mean, the only thing that I mean, Max, I'm not saying that you're wrong, but it's like we tend to pick and choose who we want to believe. Like every time Jason Cole says something in the offseason, we just scoff and say, "Oh, it's just him," but now we want to believe him. I mean, it almost feels like we're picking and choosing.
I don't scoff it. The way reporting works is if an agent tells you something, it's information. You can't pick and choose. And so if someone tells Jason Cole that Laramie Tunsil's ankle is pre-arthritic, you've got to say that. I mean, like, I'm sitting here, I'm pre-arthritic. Like, you know what I mean? Like, we all are.
We are all pre-arthritic.
And the other thing is, when you look at highly respected figures around the NFL, guys like Jay Glazer, when they start lashing out, someone who's in Brent's corner, that's when you really worry. A guy like Jay Glazer, who's very well respected around the NFL, has a lot of friends in the league and really helped.
Who trained Brent in MMA?
Right. Who trained Brent? Who helped him? And the crazy thing to me is, Miko Grimes was a sideline reporter before she was Miko Grimes. That's how she met Brent. She was a sideline reporter with the Falcons, and so like it's crazy to think of her evolution from someone who was able to be a sideline reporter to this mess.
Honestly, I gotta say, Brent Grimes is gonna probably struggle this year. And normally, if you brought in a guy like Grimes and he had some struggles, he wouldn't catch the vitriol of the team, of the fan base, like he's going to. And the only reason he's going to is because of his wife. They're going to be over it in 3 or 4 games, and those Tampa fans are going to just obliterate her on Twitter, and she is just going to have a like you said, because she's probably mentally ill. She's just going to have like the freak out of epic freakouts. Like, I don't think we've seen what we're going to see from her. And it is so nice to no longer be locked in the cage with her, but to get to be on the outside of the cage and point and laugh. And I am going to enjoy every minute of it when it happens.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was saying, Ron. We're the lucky ones because she's gone. He played well for the Dolphins, but I'm just keep that scenario in mind. Circle those 2 games on the calendar when Tampa plays Atlanta. if Brent Grimes struggles against the Atlanta Falcons, it's going to be a PR nightmare for Tampa Bay. Just remember I said that, because the Atlanta fans are going to line up to attack Miko Grimes. They're going to line up to do it. And the Tampa fans are not going to want to defend her if Brent struggles against Atlanta. That's just those games. Not that other games won't be problematic, but I'm just saying you probably will see an epic meltdown. And you think what she's saying now is bad. We all know she will not control what she's going to say, and she'll have everybody. It'll be Tampa against her and the Atlanta fans both hammering on her.
Their first game, by the way, their first game is against the Falcons in Atlanta.
Yeah. The other thing, let's look back to the Dolphins last season. The Dolphins named Brent Grimes one of the 50 greatest players in franchise history on that whole list.
That was dumb.
You guys remember that?
I remember. How can I forget?
And John Denny was left off. John Denny was left off the list.
I'd put Ed Perry over John Denny, so there.
What?
Yeah, you can't.
Ed Perry, best long snapper in Dolphins history.
You're going to have Max. He's going to have a Miko meltdown. You shouldn't say those things, Lewis.
Yeah, I'm going to start going on. I'm going to start going on Twitter.
Yeah. Do it now.
I'm getting on Twitter about this. I'm breaking my no cursing on Twitter policy. But yeah, no, think about how, let's also just talk about reasonable expectations that are as blatantly missed as John Denny. But there are so many players who you'd rather have now than Brent Grimes. I mean, there's just it's easy to Greg Camarillo.
Oh my God! Well, I would love the memory of Greg Camarillo over Brent Grimes. I don't even. Is Greg Camarillo alive anymore?
Yeah, he's actually on Twitter. He has 197 followers. He's laying low.
Is John Denny still alive? Didn't he retire in the 90s?
Oh, I actually got to fulfill I actually met John Denny this offseason, which is a story for another time. But I got to meet the legend himself, which was an out of body experience for me. But think about if the team could take back that decision to put Brent Grimes there. That's how much Brent Grimes meant to the Dolphins on the field. I'll always have some great memories, and the most notably, obviously, the interception against Detroit, and the interception against Cincinnati, the one where he was spinning around, grabbing the ball away from the guy. The Dolphins got some really good playing time out of him, and it's unfortunate that his exit as what would have ended, he would have gone down as a fan favorite in team history had Miko not messed the whole thing up. I mean, Miko really ruined who would have ended up being a beloved player in team history.
And I mean, I feel like this needs to be addressed, if only because it needs to be a disclaimer. We are not trying to say that the women should not have a voice, because that's something that Miko likes to claim, is that the only reason they're mad is because she's a woman. We're not saying that black should not have a voice. Then Miko tries to say the only reason you don't like me is because she's black. That has nothing to do with it. There are tons of people everywhere, all over the world. Max brought up Annie Apple. She is a great example of what you should be able to do. She is a personality, but she's just common, not even respectful. It's just common, normal human being courtesy. That's
right,
it.
And it's not. It has nothing to do with anything other than the ridiculousness in what you think. Whether or not your husband is employed by the team. A random Dolphins fan shouldn't go on Twitter and say the things that she says about the organization. It's wrong. It's an individual attack on someone online, and it's wrong. Whether or not, if random fans shouldn't do that, especially someone who's married to one of the team's players shouldn't do that. And she should understand that, the NFL, Mr. Ross, quote unquote, and his Jew buddies are who afford her this lifestyle. Miko Grimes is living in her mansion in Miami because of Brent's ability to play for this owner and play for this team. Without owners and without fans, these athletes wouldn't be playing. I don't think she realizes that. They're not playing for, the good of the world. They're playing for entertainment. Sports are entertainment, and they're there to entertain the fans. And that's what they're doing. And it's different from the Olympics. The Olympics are as pure of an athletic experience as you can get because it's not about money. It's about the athletes representing their country. The NFL, it's about the money. Yes, you're representing a city and a team, and you're doing what you love, playing a sport you love, but it really is about money. Miko Grimes is afforded this lifestyle by this team and by her husband, and the least she could do is show them the common courtesy of exhibiting some level of respect. And whatever she thinks behind closed doors is whatever. Whatever she says behind closed doors is whatever. When it starts distracting the team and becoming an issue, that's when it's a problem.
And I have a problem believing that, like people like AJ Francis would come to her defense and all that stuff, and I think Chris McCain too. But like, let's be perfectly honest here.
Omar's boys.
Omar's
boys were the ones always coming.
Omar hasn't said a word about it.
Not recently, but at the time.
No. I mean, this last recent blow up, I wasn't at all surprised that Omar suddenly backed off. Like,
because he would look like a fool.
Well, Omar's not getting scoop anymore. Omar's not getting scoop anymore because Miko's gone. So Omar suddenly could become dispensable. Like, I mean, he's not.
Oh my! No, come on, man. Omar was here way before Miko showed up.
Omar's getting clicks, and that's why Omar stays around. But that's a different discussion.
Yeah, I'm like
Omar's groundbreaking video. Breaking news: Ryan Tannehill performs better with a clean pocket. Like. This dude gets paid for this. It's amazing.
Hot takes.
Did anybody?
That's not even a hot take. That's
no, I know. That was sarcasm, Max. That was.
Yeah, exactly. That's coming out. That's coming right out the freezer.
I just want before we're going to wrap this conversation, I want to point to a little stretch of the schedule for the Bucks that I think you could really see where it's going to be a struggle.
Oh, Lord.
Starting on October 2nd. Oh, dang it. It just went away. Okay, sorry, guys. So starting on October 2nd, they are going to play the Broncos, the Panthers, back-to-back. Then, they'll have the 49ers, which there's nobody big there. Then you got the Raiders and the Falcons, and that Falcons game is a Thursday night game. So in like a 4.5 game stretch, they're playing 4 out of 5 teams that all have at least one or multiple wide receivers for that he's going to struggle to contend with.
And the Falcons at prime time.
Of the end for Brent Grimes. And I'm going to be honest with you. I don't feel sorry for this point at Brent Grimes at all. I don't feel sorry for him because I personally believed and have said for a year the things that she was saying when she was on the radio every weekend on WQAM running her trap about the quarterback of the team her husband played for. You can't sit there and tell me when she comes home, he disagrees with all that. It's all the same stuff he's saying. She's just his mouthpiece. So for me, whatever she's saying, he's saying it too because he doesn't shut her up. So I don't feel sorry for him at all. I hope he goes down in flames. I hate to be that way because at the time he was playing before the Miko stuff, I really liked him, but I have nothing but a negative attitude towards him and her anymore. It's just been a ridiculous situation, and I'm so glad that we don't have to deal with it, but I will sit back and laugh and watch it closely, trust me.
Well, I don't want to go as far as to say that I want Brent to fail, but I can also say that I don't necessarily feel sorry for him with the whole Miko situation anymore. If he really cared about what she said, he would have done something by now. Or maybe it really just is he can't do anything, but I don't want to go deeper into that.
Well, think about this. It's Miko also, we can tell, is the kind of person, regardless of what Brent thinks, to blow everything up. So if Brent comes home and says, yeah, like, I'm not sure about Ryan, which is normal. We all say that. We all say, I'm not sure about Ryan. If Brent says, I'm not sure if Ryan has it, that's like whatever. Like a player's expressing a thought on another player to his wife. The problem is then Miko goes on Twitter and turns it into Brent Grimes, turns it into Ryan Tannehill's a bum and everyone hates him. That's the other thing that was funny, that Ryan Tannehill, from everyone I've talked to within the Dolphins building, everyone likes Ryan Tannehill as a person. Everyone really likes Ryan Tannehill. He's a good guy. He goes fishing with all the offensive linemen on the weekends. Like, he's a good guy, and the team likes him. It's just that Miko, I think, blows all of this up.
I think this is just an opinion, Max, but I think the reason Miko doesn't like Ryan Tannehill so much is Ryan Tannehill through his whole career has just been above it. He has just, you don't see him getting into these quotes. You don't see him saying things that are controversial.
She wants him to. You mean she wants him to get mad at her?
You're saying that she wants Ryan to take the bait?
Yeah, she wants a reaction from him, is what I think you're saying, right, Chad?
The best way I could describe it would be, let's say you walk into a room and you have a guy that doesn't like another guy, and one guy is being very vocal about how much he doesn't like the other guy and how bad the other guy is, and the other guy walks in the room and he just smirks at him and keeps walking. Just smirks at him. That to me is the treatment Ryan Tannehill probably gave Miko Grimes when she was on the radio, ripping him. He just looked at her, smirked, shook his head, and kept playing like people have no respect for you, and I don't have any respect for you. And she just has never been able to get to him. And that's obviously, she's not even related to the Dolphins anymore. Her husband doesn't play for the Dolphins. It's still bugging her. So in my mind, Ryan Tannehill has gotten the best of Miko Grimes for years, and he's still on the Dolphins. People still like him, and it drives her nuts because he is what she wants to be. He's a respected player. He's got a respected wife. He does great things for the community, and she's looked at as a loudmouth lunatic that nobody really respects. And so he's like everything she's not. And so I think that's why she hates Ryan Tannehill. And I took a little offense to her calling him a bum, and I even tweeted that out. I'm like, maybe I'm wrong, but the term bum used in sports to me is somebody that's a slacker. It's somebody that shows up to camp out of shape, or somebody that shows up to camp drunk, or somebody that just doesn't care. They're a bum because they're not putting the effort in. Now, you can say Ryan Tannehill isn't that good of a football player. You can say he sucks, whatever, and you can critique him. But I feel pretty strongly the guy's not a bum. I think he comes to work and he does everything in his power to be a good quarterback.
Yeah,
so
he busts his tail. That's not a question.
That's my point. So I'm just saying the term in itself doesn't even describe Ryan Tannehill.
I don't think Miko even knows what she said.
But moving on to something I just saw on Twitter, we can go to a more positive topic. In Stephen Ross's current intern class, quote unquote intern at his company, we have Cameron Wake, Chad Pennington, Earl Mitchell, and Rashad Jones.
CP10 was there?
Quite a group of, huh?
CP10 is there?
Yeah, he's there. That's quite a group of interns that Stephen Ross has rounded up in New York.
I saw Wake, Rashad, and Earl Mitchell. I didn't know that Chad Pennington was there. No, wait a minute. Wasn't it James Michael Johnson?
He's there too, but Chad Pennington's there as well.
I didn't see Chad in the picture.
He's on the far right. If you take a look at the picture, the bigger picture that James tweeted.
Oh, I must have missed it.
Yeah, he's there in the far right.
Okay, so does that mean we're gonna get Chad Pennington to be quarterback's coach? Please, yes, please.
There's a bigger name who wears a number 8 numbers higher than Pennington, so I'd much rather see as quarterback's coach for Adam Gase.
Oh, Peyton.
One day. That would be great one day.
We'll have Peyton Manning and Wes Welker as some of our position coaches.
Based on what I heard, Reggie Wayne impressed a little more than Welker did as a coach. So it seems like Reggie Wayne, if one of the receivers is getting a call for a full-time position, it might be Reggie Wayne.
Reggie and Peyton work too. They were friends for a long time. That's
great. They were very good friends. Those two made each other a lot of money. And neither of their wives tweeted negative things about either player, so we can move on.
I wouldn't even know Peyton was married, man.
Peyton's like everything. He's got a. Yeah, I haven't actually even seen pictures of his wife. I've never seen like an appearance by her. I've seen his kids. They're always they were at his press conference and everything, but I've never seen his wife, except for in an Al Jazeera report. But that's a whole nother topic.
Nice.
All right, so yeah, let's go ahead and shift the topic a little bit. The last topic that I wanted to bring up before we wrap this show up, and we're not ready to wrap it up just yet, but the last topic that I had planned was Dwyane Wade is gone, ladies and gentlemen, and just to take a moment.
Why? I thought it was a safe place.
You can't do that to Max. He just spent an hour on his own podcast crying about that.
I know. I know. I don't want to like hurt his feelings or anything, but the fact is that D Wade has decided to. Well, then again, honestly, Max, I'm not sure if he's gonna take off yet or not because he still hasn't put pen to paper, has he?
I mean, he's put image to Snapchat. # he gone.
But he still hasn't signed it, and he keeps putting all these sad. He's
gone. Don't do this to me, Lewis. Don't play with my emotions.
I'm not trying to toy with your emotions. I'm honestly curious how, like people haven't flipped over before, like DeAndre Jordan, like saying, "Sorry, Mark Cuban, I changed my mind."
I don't even know. I don't even know where to start. I mean, if he did, our arms are open. But I mean, I think matching the Tyler Johnson contract was a sign that couldn't even happen if they wanted to. They just mathematically couldn't do it anymore.
I forgot about that. Oh, well.
Paying $50 million for Tyler Johnson when you wouldn't give Dwyane Wade $23 million.
But wait, it's $50 million over like 5 years, though, isn't it?
Over like four, but then there's 2 years at the end with like it's what's called a poison pill contract in the NBA, where you basically form an offer sheet that's pretty reasonable for the first couple years, and then you do one thing.
They tried to do that with Charles Clay, the Buffalo Bills did, right? They made it so that we couldn't match it.
They did it. Well, I mean, like, and then you could see when it backfires, the Dolphins tried to do it with C.J. Anderson. Don Aponte put together a pretty competitive offer sheet, and then the Broncos said, screw it, we're matching.
Well, the
Dolphins were convinced they had him. The Miami Dolphins, everyone I talked to was convinced that they had him. There was no thought that the Broncos would match that sheet, and they ended up doing it.
I was looking forward to talking Sonic with him.
And it's honestly made it harder for them to try and work this Von Miller deal a little bit with their cap, because they took a little bit of hit to the cap to go ahead and match that sheet, because it was kind of a front-loaded contract, the C.J. Anderson move.
And now the whole Von Miller drama is going on. How much, like, just to change the topic for just a second, how much money do you think Von Miller is going to get before this is all said and done? He would have broken records with the contract he said no to.
125 million, probably?
Yeah, he'll be the second highest paid player in NFL history behind Andrew Luck.
Oh,
I think that's
God!
Foolish move on the Broncos' part. I don't think it's even in the vicinity of a good move to pay him that, but they'll pay for that in the long run. Don't get me wrong, he's good, but this is not a guy that changes.
Von Miller's elite.
Von Miller is a great. When you watch a player who has an impact on every single down, whether it's in coverage or rushing, Von Miller is incredible. I went and I watched, because I was talking about it with my brother, and I was realizing, like, what really went wrong for the Panthers in that Super Bowl? Von Miller went wrong. Von Miller was a freak, and he is always a freak. He's great. But the question is, Chad, and I kind of agree with you, like, what value do you really hold for the outside linebacker position?
Yeah, I don't disagree with you guys that he's really good. He is, but, I mean, the Broncos won because they also had several other really good players with him. That I just looking at it from the cap standpoint, I mean, it's just such a limiting move for the Broncos to make that it's going to be very difficult for them to field competitive football teams with that much money tied into him. And I have the same concern with Sue for the Dolphins. They're both really good football players, but man, they're just one serious injury away from having all that money tied into somebody that can't help you at all. And so I just get
suspension.
nervous.
Guys, let's remember, Von Miller is one suspension away from a full year.
Yeah, that was the same point I was making.
He's in the same situation that Rashad Jones. Yep, yeah. Exactly. He's in the same boat as Rashad Jones.
And so it factors in. I don't expect either one of them are going to be foolish enough to do that, but it factors into putting that much money on the line on your cap into a player like that. So I get tentative. That's all for those big deals.
The thing you always have to consider, and it's really, we're seeing this in the NBA right now, you sign a guy to a big deal and we just think it's so, that's so crazy, that's so insane. And then 2 years later, you look around and realize, I'd rather do it had done it 2 years ago than do it now. Look at what these guys are making now. You know, I mean,
look at Goran's contract with the Heat. Think about how good that deal looks after Mike Conley became the highest paid player in NBA history.
Yeah, but it's not comparable.
And the cap keeps growing. I mean, they keep adding 5, 8, 10 million a year. So that's why a lot of times they backload these contracts, because you've got more space to work with, and then it doesn't look like it's as big a deal as when you thought originally. You know, and when
Von Miller, I'd imagine the issue right now. The issue with the NFL is that you can cut players. In the NBA, you really can't. So I'd imagine what's happening is, Ron, the Broncos are probably fighting for what you're saying, a backloaded deal. And Von Miller wants a front-loaded deal. He wants his money. And I'd imagine that's a hang-up. But I think we can all agree that regardless of what happens, come this Friday, they'll have a deal done. That's the deadline to get a long-term deal done. And Von Miller said he won't play under the franchise tag.
Is Von Miller a restricted free agent? Why haven't other teams made him offers?
Because they
franchise tag.
Now they franchise tagged.
Oh, they tagged him.
They franchise tagged him.
Smart.
Exclusive franchise tagged him, right? Like, you can't even. Like, I think if you don't, you can use what's called the franchise tag non-exclusive, and another team can come in and sign him, but then they have to compensate 2 first-round picks. And then they have the non-exclusive, which means you are guaranteeing that player gets paid even more money relative to the other positions in the league. So I'm guessing they have him franchise tag so that he makes like whatever the top 5 defensive ends or outside linebackers do in the league. That's where he's at, and I don't know what that number is, but that's where they're stuck at. And I think the Broncos at this point would rather just have him play this year tagged and worry about it next year. But I don't. Von Miller's basically saying I won't do that, but he also won't sign unless they basically risk a huge amount in the future. I mean, it's not the NBA. The NBA is you can get hurt, but it's much safer sport. You can give a bunch of money to a player because there's only 5 guys playing on the court, and one player dramatically impacts your success as a team. I mean, LeBron James.
Oh yeah.
Proves that more than anybody. In the NFL, you have such a higher risk of getting hurt, and you're
think about like let's compare relative levels of dominance. If there were an NBA player who was as dominant in their sport as Dan Marino was in football, they would have won multiple championships because it's so much easier for one player to impact the game, like we saw with LeBron James in the finals, or going back Miami Heat history, swinging it back around to Dwyane Wade. In the 2006 finals, I don't know how many of you guys remember that, but Shaq was bad. Shaq was bad that series, and Dwyane Wade averaged almost 40 points a game.
Isn't that why Alonzo Mourning came to rescue the team or something?
Right. I mean, like there were other players who obviously contributed and obviously made an impact, but Dwyane, you can see the impact in basketball much more clearly of one guy. And then, on the opposite end of that, in football, like, let's think to the NFC Championship game a few years ago when Russell Wilson had an awful day, but the Seahawks were still able to win it because they had a good team. And then you see what happens to the Warriors when Steph Curry loses his rhythm and doesn't shoot well, and they go down the tube. Like, it's just, you see, it works both ways in football. There's a beauty to football that is, while one dominant player can't win you a championship, you also can't be brought down always by one player having an off day. And in basketball, it's much easier to lose that way. But back to the contract, the NBA South, the NFLPA, I'm predicting a major issue when the next collective bargaining agreement comes up. That could be a serious holdout because you're looking at the money that MLB and NBA players are making, and their leagues are half as profitable. That could be a serious issue for the NFLPA. And for the NFL, when the NFLPA gets down to negotiating that new CBA.
The NFLPA is probably the weakest of the sports unions, though, out of the major sports.
I don't think it's that the NFLPA is the weakest. I think it's that the NFL as a central organization is the strongest. I think it's more of a statement about the NFL than it is the NFLPA.
Yeah, you might be right on that. But either way, the balance of power is more in the favor of the league for the NFL than it is the NBA, and especially for baseball. I mean, the players own baseball.
Yep.
But you may not see it.
You guys, this was before my lifetime. That the serious strike in baseball that got a season canceled almost. It's crazy, and I hope it doesn't happen in football. But we could be running into a serious issue where the NFLPA says basketball has 50 million less in cap. And they're dividing 100 million at that point that the next CBA is in maybe 2018 or 2019. I'm not sure when it is, but the NBA could have $120 million between 15 players. And the NFL could still be dividing, 170 at that point, maybe between 53. And so it could become a serious issue with balance of power. And Ron, you're exactly right. It's out of whack. Regardless of where it lies, it favors the NFL, and something is going to be done about it.
But here's what they'll do, and you can already see it building. It's just like with the last lockout. It was all about money, and then all of a sudden the NFL played the NFLPA with, oh, okay, we'll give you less practices, less padded practices, this, that, and the other. And that's what. And when they came away from it, they were like, "Oh, what just happened? This sucks."
Yeah.
And then what they'll do this time is it'll be a lot about Goodell or whoever the commissioner is and his power. That will be a huge bargaining chip for them. The concussion issues, marijuana, they'll play those like issues against the NFLPA as bargaining chips, and before we know it, the NFLPA will have not really come out ahead on the money front, but feel like they got some victories because of these other things. I can see it going that way because that's the game they played last time as well.
It's and I was actually speaking with, interestingly, we've seen so many ACL specifically injuries in training camps recently and even in preseason. And I was actually talking to a doctor who said the real problem is that the players aren't getting ligament training, which you can only really get through practice on the field. So these players are now lacking ligament training that would allow them to be in the right shape because they're practicing half as much. Those 2-a-day practices were actually good because the players were trained and they were ready to go. Yes, they were hard and they might have gotten, dinged up, but their bodies were ready. And now he's saying there's a lower level of preparation for the players' bodies in a game that's becoming more explosive. And he said it's a big issue.
I never actually thought about that. But we kind of gone off on a little tangent there. Well, let's swing it back a little bit towards NBA. Dwyane Wade is gone, but now that he's no longer the face of sports in South Florida, or at least I don't think he is, since he's technically a Chicago Bull. We have a problem in that unless somebody has a better candidate, we don't necessarily have a face for South Florida sports. And before I let you guys get in your responses, I want to kind of refer back to the column that I wrote a lot early this week. Rather last week, but anyway. I feel like there are a lot of players that, while good at their own sports, the simple fact that they play the sport, or the fact that the fans just don't care, or the fans don't even practically know he exists, it makes other players somewhat. It makes those players disqualified from being the face of South Florida. If you think of major sports teams in South Florida, you are thinking the Miami Heat, because now the younger crowd thinks the Heat before the Dolphins. Then you have the Dolphins, because football and the NFL is too big to be going down too low on the totem pole. And then maybe baseball. And the only reason is because...
Then it might be the Panthers. It might be the Panthers out of the Marlins.
Well, if it is the Panthers, then I mean it's only because they've been successful. But let's be honest. I can still count on only I can't even use both of my hands to count how many people I know who actually follow hockey. And I know
Agreed.
Like down here, like I know the Panthers won, but.
Well, down here, I know obviously up north and other places, a ton of people who follow hockey religiously. But just in South Florida, yeah. I don't even think I have 5 friends who closely follow the Panthers. And I have a lot more who follow the Marlins.
Right, and that's my point is that it's like any player from the Florida Panthers, like even Jaromir Jagr, who's like this 44-year-old legend in NHL now, he's gonna be in the Hall of Fame and blah 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 blah. Barely anybody knows who he is, so he's obviously not the face of South Florida sports. Then you have the Marlins, who I feel are disqualified outright because nobody in South Florida cares about the Marlins.
Well, let's not disqualify Giancarlo.
Well, I know I know Giancarlo's good, man. And I know Jose Fernandez is really good too. I'm not debating.
It wouldn't be Jose. It would be Giancarlo if we're having conversation. And I mean, it really would be John Dennis. Let me explain. Had Udonis Haslem not re-signed with the Heat, and it could be Udonis Haslem, who knows? But no, I'm kidding.
No, it's not Udonis.
John Denny would have been the longest tenured player in Miami. He would have been the greatest. He is the greatest. So my campaign, now that Dwyane Wade is gone, I'm announcing it. I just thought of this. I'm announcing it tonight on the PhinManiacs podcast. Is that John Denny is the face of Miami sports. You can write me angry letters. You can at me on Twitter. You can do whatever you want, but that's the campaign starting.
Nobody's gonna be angry at you, Max. They're just gonna think you've gone a little loopy or you drank too much.
I've done both, but John Denny is still the greatest. the face of Miami sports.
Okay, now, Chad, you were saying...
For the face, this is just my general opinion. If you want to call somebody a quote unquote face of an area, like the face of Miami sports or South Florida sports, and to me, that comes from somebody knowing who that person is outside of the sport itself. And so, obviously, we all know the NFL players real well. You guys follow basketball a lot closer than I do. But if you want to be the face of a place that people would know who they are that don't watch basketball at all. I mean, obviously, this is a drastic person, but would you say Michael Jordan? Everybody practically on the planet, but definitely everybody in the United States knows who Michael Jordan is, and it can be somebody that does
How can
not
they forget?
watch
They
any
have a meme of him every 5 seconds.
Well, you know what I'm saying, though.
Yeah, I know
so
what you mean.
everybody knows who Tom Brady is. Everybody knows who Peyton Manning is, and so it's to be the face like that. You have to be somebody that's known outside the sport. That's just my opinion. It can't be somebody within the sport. I mean, obviously, people that follow NFL football are going to know football players a lot better, but. They always used to do that Jay Leno thing. You guys remember where he just randomly walk up on the street and ask somebody a question and just to see what.
Yeah, jaywalking.
Yeah, and so to me, if you do a jaywalking anywhere in the country and you ask about this person, then that would qualify them to maybe be the face because they're representing your area to a greater number of people or a greater community of people. And obviously, he wasn't here long, but you obviously could say LeBron James was because most people know who LeBron James is, whether they watch basketball or not.
Well, going back to basketball, I mean, like Hassan Whiteside could end up the face of Miami sports. It could happen. Like one could argue that if you went up to 100 people and you asked who's an athlete who plays in Miami right now after all of them got disqualified by saying Dwyane Wade, it would end up, I don't think anyone would say Giancarlo Stanton. I don't think enough people know who he is. I don't think so many people would say Cameron Wake. I think Cameron Wake deserves it more than anyone in Miami right now. Cameron Wake is clearly, other than John Nenny, Cameron Wake is clearly the most deserving player. And then it's like, who could it be? There doesn't have to be one. There doesn't have to be a face, a universal face. There's some cities where you could say there aren't. I mean, like some guys,
absolutely.
like I think just there's some cities definitely where you could say that there aren't really a face right now. But I mean, down the road, you look at guys who have the potential to be. Ryan Tannehill is obviously in a great position just by being a quarterback. Then Ndamukong Suh, but he's hated. So Ndamukong Suh is nationally hated, even though he hasn't really been on any of his antics since he got to Miami. So, you know, he could be the face of the sports without being a good face. And then it's Hassan Whiteside. I think if the Heat are successful, Justice Winslow, they're young athletes in Miami. I think because of Jeffrey Loya's deficiencies and because of the Miami Marlins deficiencies, it will never be Giancarlo. And because of baseball's deficiencies as a whole in terms of popularity right now. Cameron Wake is at the end of the hill. Cameron Wake is over the hill. It's tough.
It takes success. It doesn't necessarily mean championships, but it takes success. Because I mean, I'd feel pretty justified to say Dan Marino was a face of the South Florida area, and because I would say, you know, 75 to 80% of the people or more, if you ask, do you know who Dan Marino is? They're going to say, oh, yeah, I heard of him. He was a football player. And I mean, they're going to know who he was. And you can have players that maybe were not outrageously successful that people know who they are. And
everyone knows who Dan Marino was. Everyone knows who Dan Marino was, and everyone knows who Dwyane Wade is. But there's no one like that in Miami now.
No, there's not. And so that's going to, I mean, Ryan Tannehill could become that person, but he'd have to have a lot of success.
And you know, that's interesting. What do you guys think? If you went on the streets in New York and you said, name an athlete in Miami, just by being the quarterback, just by being talked about a lot, and just by playing for the NFL, the most popular sports league in America, do you think Ryan Tannehill would be the most common name?
I would say Sue is at this point. I would say most people.
Sue or Wake, maybe, yeah.
Well, I think a lot more people know who Ndamukong Suh is than Cameron Wake, just in general. You say the guy who kicked Matt Schaub in the ball. Because he's infamous, yeah. But whether or not he can become the face, I don't know. But there's always interesting players, and I think it's a lot more than just a simple I'm good at my sport. I mean, Derek Jeter is an example of somebody. He was so well known and loved in the New York area, and you would associate him with the New York Yankees. But I wouldn't say Derek Jeter is one of the best baseball players of all time. He was good, but he clearly was a face of the franchise and a face of New York. And so, who it'll be and how they'll come about being it, well, it'll go into success, and it'll honestly go into how much exposure they get in the greater media as a whole. I mean, you can be a known player because you're around, you're acting in a movie, or you know what I mean, you're out in the public's eye, and that's what it's going to take, I think, to get a face.
Well, okay, so I think I just look at it from a different perspective than you guys, because you guys are saying that it's up to everybody else to decide who the face of South Florida sports is. And my stance has been like, why is it any of the rest of the world's business who we don as our face of South Florida? Because if you look like Max, would you say that LeBron James was the face of the Miami Heat, or would you have said Dwyane Wade because Dwyane Wade was just that guy?
I think if you asked anyone in the world, it would be LeBron James.
But if you ask somebody in South Florida,
locally, I think we all agree that, especially looking back on it, even at the time, LeBron was a mercenary.
he is.
LeBron was like a hired guy, and Dwyane Wade was the guy we all loved. When you went to Heat games, Dwyane Wade still got the last introduction, which is obviously the biggest. It's not like in football where it goes positionally. In basketball, you can introduce it however you want, and Dwyane Wade would still get the loudest cheers.
Right.
I know when I was there, when I would go to games and they would all be playing, Dwyane Wade would still get the loudest reception, and he was still the guy. And for my generation, I wrote a column about this as well. I think every Miami sports writer wrote it in some form or another. I didn't watch. Dan Marino was YouTube clips for me. Dan Marino wasn't, the quarterback of the Dolphins who I remember, growing up. For me, like the first season I remember vividly was Pennington, and then Henne, and like Cleo Lemon briefly. And so like Dan Marino wasn't like a tangible figure almost. It sounds weird to say, but like in the same way, someone said it to me on Twitter, I think it might have been Eldon, who said to me, for what the last generation, the way they look at Jim Brown is kind of how we look at Dan Marino. Like, he's a guy in YouTube clips. He wasn't the quarterback that we remember. And so Dwyane Wade was the guy. He was the most popular athlete in Miami. He was a god. And you look at him departing, you say, well, who's going to fill that void? And the answer is no one. No one is going to be Dwyane Wade again. No one, and especially no one on the scene right now. I mean, like, even if Ryan Tannehill takes the leap, we don't expect him to be a great NFL quarterback. And so we don't expect him to be able to achieve that level. And I mean, like, the only way I could see it happening is if the Dolphins somehow go on to win multiple Super Bowls with Ryan Tannehill, then maybe regardless of how good he is, he becomes that name. But no one, I think, that's on the scene right now to have that impact that oh, and one guy we totally left out of the discussion that just dawned on me is Jarvis Landry. A lot of people know who Jarvis Landry is.
And that's probably who a lot of people would say. Like, I've had a lot of responses telling me that it was Tannehill, it was Landry, and I mean, again,
it's Odell Beckham's best friend.
Yeah, well, he's Odell Beckham's best friend. Yeah, him and Antonio Brown and all these other people. But I digress.
And Gino, I love that practice crew. There was an NFL group like practicing at a random high school in Miami, and it was Xavier Rhodes, Jarvis Landry, Antonio Brown, and then Geno Smith, with that group of like Pro Bowl level players.
Yeah, they picked an odd quarterback to throw the ball to them, I guess.
Hey, Geno Smith's got a good arm when he doesn't have to decide where to throw it.
No, Geno Smith has a good arm Geno Smith has a good arm in Miami. Everywhere else, he's terrible. Like, if Geno Smith were the Miami Dolphins quarterback, we would win every home game. I'm convinced of that.
Thad Lewis.
Or Thad Lewis, yeah.
Who can really swing it in sunlight.
Thad Lewis just beats the Dolphins. It doesn't matter where.
Yes. That's true. Thad Montana.
Yeah, he beats everybody. He beats the Dolphins even if they were in Canada.
I think the Bills did play in Canada for a few years. They did a game in Toronto.
Well, I don't think Thad Lewis was playing at that point. But anyway,
He was not
my
in spirit.
what I've been trying to explain to people is that I look at the face of South Florida as somebody who's been around for a while, somebody who has become a fan favorite, and not only a fan favorite, because Jarvis Landry is also a fan favorite, yes, but I picked Cameron Wake because he also has a legacy. He has a story. He has this attitude about him that you just and he's made so many different comebacks. You look at him and you say, this man is worthy of being a Hall of Famer, even though he hasn't really done much with the Dolphins. And when I say that, I mean it's because of winning. They haven't won. That's what somebody tried to tell me, is that every Dolphin is immediately disqualified because the Dolphins haven't won. If winning was all that mattered, then Jaromir Jagr would be the face of South Florida sports, because the Panthers are the only team actually winning right now. So not counting the Marlins, but again, I always say Jeffrey Loria, and that's all I have to say, because like, how many people watch baseball anyway? And then you add the whole Jeffrey Loria drama, and you have a very small, very, very small fan base who actually still watches baseball. I don't think they even managed to fill up half the stadium on a regular basis. So I say that's the only reason I said that. Guys like Giancarlo, I know how good he is. He broke the record for home runs. He has more 400-foot home runs than actual Major League Baseball teams in the past 3 years or something like that. They came up with a bunch of crazy stats to prove why Giancarlo is an amazing home run hitter, which he is, and I will not deny that. He's an amazing player, but he's a Marlin. Anywhere else, he'd probably be the face of baseball. But he's in Miami as a Marlin, and so he's disqualified. Ichiro, 4,000 hits coming on the way. He's going to end up in the Hall of Fame too. Barely anybody remembers him because he's a Marlin right now. Like, they remember Ichiro from the Seattle Mariners, not because he's a Marlin. Jose Fernandez, he'll be gone in a couple of years because I guarantee you Jeffrey Loria won't pay him. So that's gone. And then you brought up somebody like Hassan Whiteside or Justice Winslow. I mean, yes, you might have a point there, and maybe in a couple of years they will be. But I'd said no to Hassan because I'm still not sure if he's going to be able to continue doing what he's doing. If I recall, there were times where Hassan Whiteside just kind of, I don't know. I listened to Spoon a lot when it came to basketball, and he always brought up how Hassan Whiteside seemed to be like moping around the bench instead of actually doing his job and being a member of the Miami Heat, if you get what I mean. But I also look at it from the sense that, and Justice Winslow's still a kid, so he's not going to be getting anywhere just yet. So I can't give it to him either.
And I mean, Justice Winslow needs to develop an offensive game, because we saw last year he was abysmal on offense. But Hassan Whiteside, we can all agree, is the face of Miami Snapchat.
Okay.
So that can all be agreed on. And if Dolphins fans don't have him, Jordan Phillips is also a great ad on Snapchat.
Well, if it was social media Olympics, then Miko's the winner forever and ever. Amen. But I digress on that. She's the biggest name, but yeah.
Let's talk about the best. And it's Hassan Whiteside announcing that he's signing with the Heat, walking out of a room to Will Smith's Miami.
Well, Hassan, I mean, again, I'm not denying how good Hassan is. He's good when he wants to be, and that's the problem I had. If I could trust that Hassan Whiteside was going to have that same super work ethic that Dwyane Wade brought, like, I understand nobody's ever going to be Dwyane Wade again. I get that. I'm not trying to say that Cameron Wade could be Dwyane Wade. Cameron Wade can't fill Dwyane Wade's shoes. No way. Nobody can. But what I mean is that he's the next closest thing we have to a legend in Miami. He's all they got left. And somebody tell me Ndamukong Suh, and I said, do not fall in love with Ndamukong Suh, because as soon as his contract is up, or maybe even before that, he'll be gone and he'll be playing for somebody else and pretending like he never was there. And then Jarvis Landry, he's really good, but he's still working on his legacy. Cameron Wake already has one. He's already been a fan favorite. And I know you, and Max, you actually called me out on this one. Is that I remember saying that if Cameron Wake left Miami, it would hurt almost as bad as if Dwyane Wade did. Now let me clarify. Not before you jump on me. Let me clarify. I understand Dwyane Wade hurt more than Cameron Wake ever could, but can you deny that it would hurt if Cam Wake left?
It would hurt if anyone leaves. It hurts if anyone who plays for your team for that long leaves.
Yeah, but if let's say, okay,
I'm not talking if Dallas Thomas leaves. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying if someone who has played for your team for, how long, 8+ years, anyone who's been on the team that long, it's going to hurt. And especially for Dolphins fans, my generation grew up on Cameron Wake.
Koemisi's been with the team a long time. Is anybody going to feel heartbroken if he leaves?
Okay, let me specify good players. Any good player. Cameron Wake is going to have a special place in the memory of Miami sports fans because, if he doesn't have any, he's never played in a playoff game. I mean, the guy has had almost no team success, but personally, he's been great for the Dolphins. So there's going to be a special place for him, but Dwyane Wade is a legend. I mean, Dwyane Wade doesn't have, you say, Cameron Wake will leave a legacy. Of course he will. He was the defining player for a specific generation, mine. I remember Jason Taylor's Jets season more vividly than I do any great season with the Dolphins. Luckily, I was there when Jason Taylor got carried off the field. It's a great memory of mine, but I still didn't grow up with him as a sports hero for the Dolphins. For me, it's Cameron Wake, and I'll always remember him for that. And it really hurt last season watching him get injured. That sucked. I mean, there's no other way to say it. That's just the worst. You know how hard the guy works. You know what he means for the team. He was just hitting its stride, and then he gets hurt. It's so frustrating. But
and that's what I mean, is that I feel like that if more than any other player, it would hurt more if Cam Wake left. I understood
any other player on the Dolphins?
Any other player, not counting your love of John Denny. Any other player on the Dolphins, yes.
Oh, of course. Oh, it would hurt more. It would hurt more than any other player on the Dolphins, and it would hurt more than any player on the Dolphins in the last 10 years because of what Cameron Wake has meant. It's the whole through thick and thin thing. We've all bonded with Cameron Wake in a weird way because the team has been so bad, and Cameron Wake has always been good. He's always showed up to work. He's always been a team player. He's always been the guy in Miami. And he's that reliable presence. And we've all bonded with him in a strange way. But Dwyane Wade raised banners. Dwyane Wade brought glory. He raised the franchise. It's incredible. And it's Lewis, you and I work with these athletes pretty frequently, these Dolphins players, and Cameron Wake, we get, you get a little bit starstruck because it's Cameron Wake. But the only time I've ever been unable to maintain any semblance of professionalism is around Dwyane Wade. I turn into a 12-year-old girl who just saw Justin Bieber.
I gotta deduct you points for using that analogy. Just how dare you bring up Justin Bieber on my podcast?
It's like Beatlemania from the 1960s in America.
That's better than Justin Bieber.
Wherever Dwyane Wade goes in Miami, you could see a mob following him. You could see a crowd. You could see it from space. Word spreads and everyone knows. It's crazy. He is and will always be one of the most loved. And regardless of what happens in Chicago, Dwyane Wade will retire as a member of the Heat. And he'll be remembered for his days with the Heat. As the Heat. That actually was a Freudian slip. He was the Heat. And so it's tough to say, but I totally agree. And it's not even close. More than any other player on the Miami Dolphins, Cameron Wake leaving would hurt the most.
I was scared to death that he would leave, and I mean, and not just.
I thought so too. I was worried that was going to be. I was worried that our last memory was going to be him getting stretchered off in Foxborough.
And that would have been awful, and that's why I say.
Our last memory would have really been Cameron Wake continuing to rush Tom Brady,
even
despite
after
being on one leg. Yeah. Meanwhile, Mike Wallace can't be bothered to fight for a football, and Cameron Wake keeps going at Tom Brady on one leg.
That's you just keep adding more to why I picked Cam Wake. Like, even he's old, I get it. Even if he is the face now, he won't be for very much longer. That's undeniable. I'm just saying right now, based on his sport, based on what he means to the Dolphins in general, based on his legacy now in Miami, based on all of these other factors, like the national respect he gets, like even that, I said I didn't want to use that, but that does have a factor. And Cameron Wake is respected nationally for his ability to rush the passer, even at his advanced age. And that's the only reason why I say if anybody was the face of South Florida sports right now, and again, Dwyane Wade, he is the man, and Cam Wake wouldn't even come close. But Cam Wake is the only guy I can think of who qualifies to be that new face right now.
Yeah, I agree. He's the only one who has a qualification, but I still think his age and lack of team success will prevent him from doing so. I agree. He's the most worthy player other than John Denny in Miami right now.
Ron, you've been quiet. Any thoughts, man, before we hang up?
Max, I have a question for you, and I swear I'm not trolling you purposely. I have a legitimate question for you. What are you gonna do if the Dolphins? What are you gonna do if the Dolphins decide to maybe a year early move on from John Denny this year?
Didn't they sign a young long snapper?
I'm going to sob
yes, they did.
into my John Denny jersey. I'm going to sob into my John Denny jersey, but continue to wear it every Sunday. And if you say you're a Dolphins fan and I pull out that jersey and you don't know who he is, then you aren't a real Dolphins fan, as far as I'm concerned.
Max, I have another question, and really, if you're not willing to share it, I understand. But for real, man, I never understood it. Why the obsession with John Denny?
Because first of all, he deserves, and it really started with, I don't remember exactly what year it was. You guys remember the game between the Chargers and the Raiders, where the Raiders long snapper botched like 3 snaps and they ended up losing the game because of it? Or you go back, there's so many plays in NFL history where the long snapper screwed up. The only time I could think of John Denny screwing up is when he hit Brandon Fields in the face against the Patriots in a game we ended up winning.
And even then, he should have caught it.
John Denny screws up, we win. But John Denny deserves that level of respect, at least whether you don't have to revere the guy. I mean, he's a long snapper, but respect at least for being an integral part of the team, because you don't realize how important the long snapper is until you don't have a good one. John Denny has been so reliable for a team where you have to worry about every problem every offseason. Quarterback, offensive line, wide receiver, tight end, cornerback, linebacker, everything is a problem except for long snapper. You always know you have a long snapper.
So you kind of have love for the unsung hero.
It is the unsung hero. Would you guys say he's the Dolphins' greatest unsung hero?
Well, I guess if we put it in that context, yeah.
I mean, he's probably been the Dolphins' most consistent player. You could say that over the past years.
He's been the most. He's been the most consistent player in the NFL.
Well, at least now I know.
Entire National Football League.
At least now I know why.
Peyton Manning has thrown interceptions. Tom Brady has thrown interceptions. Aaron Rodgers has thrown interceptions. Odell Beckham has dropped passes. Julio Jones has dropped passes. Andre Johnson has dropped passes. Frank Gore has rushed for under 1,000 yards. John Denny is still not messing up his snaps.
So we move him to center, or we don't have a problem.
You could argue Stephen Gostkowski and Justin Tucker, maybe, but it's John Denny.
I remember one time it would have been Adam Vinatieri. It's been a long time since
Adam Vinatieri. If Adam Vinatieri doesn't get into the Hall of Fame on the first ballot, they should just eliminate special teams altogether.
How old is he now? Like 42, something like that?
He's like 59.
Nice.
I think Morton Anderson made it to 48 before he retired.
I mean, what was it? Like, there was one player who played quarterback and kicker back in the day.
Oh, I know who you're talking about, and I can't remember his name. And there are a bunch of
because he's always on the list. He's always on the longevity list for records.
He's always
George something.
There's a bunch of old football fans just laughing at us right now.
Yeah.
I know Steve DeBerg lasted forever and ever.
He did, but didn't he have more fumbles? Wasn't it him that had more fumbles than like anybody else, or was that a different player?
DeBerg?
Trying to remember. Yeah, maybe it was Craig. That's right. That guy fumbled more than anybody else in NFL history. He was another quarterback that lasted forever.
Well, if you last forever, you're
George
gonna
Blanda.
fumble more.
George Blanda was the guy.
Oh,
who played
that's
forever.
him. That's him. Yeah. Because I remember watching the top 10, watch NFL Network's top 10 or whatever, and he was on that list, and I'm like, he played until he was how old?
Yeah.
Of course, the NFL is a lot different than it was back then. Probably back then you probably could survive that long.
Wonder what the record is. Who's the oldest ever NFL player? That'd be something fun to look up. I guess.
It's probably going to be Vinatieri by the end of it, but I'd say it was probably George Blanda.
How old was Blanda?
Let's see.
Like, play the Jeopardy music here.
It is. He played till he was 48. George Blanda. He is the oldest
48 years old. Damn.
Yeah, that's
quarterback. Crazy. Like, not as a kicker, as a quarterback. Well, he kicked too, but quarterback. Of course, if Tom Brady keeps playing like he is, he may make it to 48.
Oh, please don't say that.
That's
man.
Like I really hope I'm wrong, but that's
and on that note.
Yeah, right.
Killing me, man. What a depressing show.
Well, we didn't have a lot of nice stuff to talk about. I mean, Miko, Dwyane Wade leaving. It was pretty depressing when you think about it.
Hopefully, Lewis and I will have some happy stuff to talk about with you guys once training camp gets underway. I think you guys have two shows before then, one show.
Well, we'll see, man. It depends. If Miko goes on another rant, maybe we'll have another show just to talk about it. I don't know. There's until training camp actually starts, there's not much to discuss. So we'll see what happens there. So, okay, I want to thank everybody for joining us. Luckily, we got the show to go live this time and actually make it cleanly. So it started off a little rocky, but we figured out a way to get it to work. So. Let's just give my production manager a big round of applause on that front because he's the one who got it all working properly.
Woohoo.
Thank you.
Round of applause.
Thank you. All right, so let's see. Training camp starts at July 29th, and the Dolphins are going to be holding their fan. They're going to have like a fan festival for the first 3 days of camp. So if you all want to make sure you register, you go to the Miami Dolphins website, and they're going to have free tickets. Yes, the tickets are free. You can watch for free. You can roast for free. But thank you, Dolphins, for putting up that canopy. Now we won't be as hot. It's still going to be hot, but we won't be as hot.
And for just a small fee of $200 a seat, you could sit next to Lewis or I if you would like.
I'll let you do the collecting on that front.
Nice.
And then you can pay for lunch since we're gonna take you to take the Cuban experience.
Perfect.
All right.
With your $200.
Yeah, with your $200. Well,
somehow I have a feeling that people,
authentic Cuban food.
Somehow I have a feeling there's a couple girls that would go sit by Max for $200, but I don't think I'd have much of a shot.
Oh my God! Max? Is there something you should tell? Is there something you need to tell us?
My girlfriend. My girlfriend will be sitting next to me for free.
Yeah, no, just that Max might be a little better looking than we are. That's all.
I take offense to that. Maybe look better.
Well, I don't know. I'm a dude. I guess I'm not the best judge to have this conversation. Now we're really going off the rails here.
Yeah, now the show's over. Good night.
Now I officially killed it.
Thank you all so much for joining us, and we'll see you all next time for another edition of PhinManiacs Live.